What's going on, Imperials? It's Emperor Cubone here. Since the very beginning, Pokemon types have been a huge factor in setting the monsters apart, and a huge step up from that was the ability to combine the types together, resulting in all sorts of unique attributes. However, despite the decades of production and now over 1,000 separate Pokemon, we still do not have every possible type combination covered. But to their credit, Gen 9 did their part and brought in quite a few. So let's take a look at the ones that they've checked off the list and kind of order them and how well they did, while also maybe pointing out a few missed opportunities that they let slip past as well. So the first one we knew about was before the games even came out, when a trailer showed us Graphia. And actually there was a trailer before that one to tease the reveal. But this was pretty good all things considered, since normal is kind of hard to pull off with other types. But I think it works here with these sort of paint-like secretions this Pokemon makes. You can really buy that they're toxic. But beyond that, the Pokemon itself is fairly plain. So I do think that both types fit very well, and a unique animal premise to tie it all together is a pretty good start for bringing in new type combinations. It does have a pre-evolution as well, who is fine, sure, but not really anything special. I could honestly see them just being a normal type, but I won't complain. Together, these types actually synergize really well, since Poison already resists fighting, which makes it so that normal just kind of adds a ghost immunity to a pure Poison type. So it's a decent all-around typing on a decent all-around Pokemon, and I would say that it was pulled off maybe the best of any new type pairing for Gen 9. So it doesn't take long to notice that there are a bunch of familiar-looking Pokemon that aren't technically related to the others, but I think one of the universally applauded ones is known as Iron Valiant. This robot creature is the first combination of fairy and fighting, which makes total sense because its design clearly draws from Gallade and Gardevoir, so why not combine their separate types together? Maybe we'll see this again outside of this, but I do think a bridge like this is amazing and could be adopted by other Pokemon as well. But the pairing itself is a bit of a mixed bag since it's got both 5 weaknesses and 5 resistances, but I do think this current lone avatar is more than capable of handling itself in combat. The next best entry to me is another Paradox Pokemon, but from the opposite version in Scarlet with the Great Tusk. This, of course, being the awesome prehistoric version of Donphan, who keeps the ground typing but also gains fighting. Now, on paper, this combo isn't a full benefit since it does lean slightly harder on the weaknesses. However, both ground and fighting are incredibly strong offensive types, covering many others for super effective damage. Not to mention the stats on this ancient rolling elephant of death will hit hard enough against its 6 weaknesses. So it's taken long enough to get this combination, but it would still be nice to see it again so that we could try it out on a little more common Pokemon. I guess since I'm ranking these in order, the next one should be Scovillain. Ever since Gen 3 showed us that starter types could be put together, we've been waiting for Grass and Fire, and Paldea finally delivered. And really, Grass and Fire is pretty great, only being weak to Flying, Poison, and Rock, and the Grass type can beat that anyway, and having 4 resistances in trade. So it really is a fun combination. The Pokemon itself is perfectly fine. I mean, they went with a Pepper, which is like the one thing that most every person out there suggested for it. That doesn't make the Pokemon bad, just a little predictable, and its defenses aren't really all that substantial, so it might not last too long. But at the very least, you can get this one before the game ends, unlike Fire and Water, so it's already better than that one. Next up, I don't truly care much for the Pokemon Pomo, but at the very least it did gain the Fighting type, so that's the first time that it's ever been paired with Electric. The fact that it's on a lackluster Pokemon doesn't take away from these types together, resulting in 5 resistances with only 3 weaknesses, so it is a pretty nice makeup. And actually, it does occur again in the Violet Paradox Pokemon Iron Hands, who is also fighting an Electric. So this powerhouse definitely elevates the combination, and sort of balances it out from the kind of awful redundant Pikachu clone. But if you do want to try out this combination early, you're still going to be stuck with this Muscle Mouse. So of the last two, I think the Revavroom line would be next. Some people would put it much higher simply because Steel and Poison is actually a phenomenal combination with 10 resistances and only 2 weaknesses, even if one of those is a quad weakness to ground. So the typing itself should not be overlooked, but I don't think the Pokemon that brought it to life quite live up to the potential here. Firstly, even with all those resistances, the defenses on this Jalopy are not very high. And even worse is that it doesn't evolve until level 40, which is pretty late. And an even bigger insult is that Varoom's hidden ability is Slow Start. But even without that downside, you would really expect Pokemon based on automobiles to be a lot faster than they are. But the type pairing is still solid, and hopefully we can get it again in the not-too-distant future. So finally, the last new combination of types that Scarlet and Violet introduced was Bug and Dark. Really, this one is kind of shocking to be overlooked until Gen 9, but we finally got it with Low Kicks. So these two types together are fairly neutral with both 5 weaknesses and 5 resistances, so it's not too noteworthy either way, and the Pokemon itself is totally fine, I guess. It just seems a little generic to me, looking kinda like a Power Rangers villain, and with stats that are perfectly acceptable but nothing to write home about. But Nimble, the Pokemon it evolves from, is kind of hard to find before the first gym, no matter which route you take. And when you've already had to pass by plenty of other bugs just to get there, I don't know if you'll bother training up a weaker Pokemon that doesn't even have the Dark type yet, just to reach that unique typing. But Dark and Bug is not useless by any means, and I do hope that we'll be able to get more of them as time goes on, maybe just a little more prominently from the start. And I do think it is worth noting that Gen 9 also added new Pokemon with the Dragon and Ice typing, as well as the Fighting and Ghost typing. These pairings, of course, only previously being exclusively on legendary Pokemon, being Kyurem and Marshadow. And this also happened the same for Glimmet with Poison and Rock that used to only be on the Ultra Beast Nihilego. So it's always nice when such a restricted type combination gets easier to use and can be seen before the story's climax or even later. However, despite Gen 9 doing their part, there are still 9 type combinations that have yet to be fulfilled. But I do think that some of these could have gotten covered with the current crop of Pokemon as well. Not that they needed to bend over backwards to include them all, but really how hard would it have been to make Houndstone a rock type? We've had plenty of chances to get the Ghost and Rock typing over the years, 2 major ones being overlooked last gen and Galar, and yet again they seem wholly uninterested in checking off the last Ghost pairing, even though this Pokemon has a rock sticking out of their head and literally has stone in their name. Oh, whatever. That's probably the most obvious one, but there's still some others that could have seen the light of day if they wanted, like perhaps Rock and Normal, possibly being on the Nacli line, since they are very clearly rock, but I can't be the only one that feels like they should have a little something else too, right? I don't necessarily know if Normal is what they needed, but it couldn't hurt. Or if not them, then maybe also the Pure Rock Cloth could have done it. In addition to that, I could see Charcadet having adopted the Fairy typing, or even one of its evolutions, particularly Armarouge being a Fire and Fairy type to finally get that one off the list as well. But outside of that, the possible combinations kind of go downhill from there. They don't really have any possible ground or fairy options, or ice and poison, or bug and dragon. Maybe a normal and steel type, but probably not. And that's okay. One generation doesn't need to do it all. But as much as Paldea did for the cause, I do think they could have done a little more without really trying that much harder. But those are the new type combinations officially covered in Gen 9. Only a few left to go. Which of these new type pairings do you think was done best? Let me know down in the comments. Also be sure to leave a like, share this video, and subscribe so that you too can become an Imperial today. And until next time, stay grounded.